And we have the 7:30, so pre-market news on Friday. So while we don't have anything today, know what's coming up in the future. Okay, guys, it's very important. All right, so here we are looking at the daily chart. Now, the daily chart is giving us a really interesting look, guys. We do still have MACDs continuing to lead lower as the price has mostly gotten higher. Of course, it didn't here, but it gave us the most wonderful opportunity for a W pivot to the upside, which it did what it was supposed to do. We want to either equal or exceed this pivot. We exceeded it, not by much. It was a higher pivot in the MACDs than the previous pivot. Has it been reset? I don't really consider like that reset happening until we get both the price and the MACDs on the opposite side of the EMAs and the zero line. Whenever we see that pullback that's happening right there, right here, to really have a good feeling, or I don't want to use feeling, have a good idea, understanding that we have a good possibility for this to pull back, is really what's happening in the MACDs right here. Okay, so this price pushed down. Oh, not what I meant to grab. Sorry. This price pushed down. Let me go ahead and turn this off because it just gets in my way. It pushed down and it pulled back, right? I know Dan in his mind is going, Lord, woman, please use the hotkeys, but it's just not happening. Okay. You know me by now, not a hotkey person. Anyways, the price pulls back right here. This is the reaction we see in the MACDs when that happens. Now, what gives this more strength and weight to go to the downside with that retracement divergence is the fact that we're already outside of the Bollinger Bands here and we're pushing down with strength. We are not in that position here. We're not outside of the Bollinger Bands and we're not pushing down with strength. Now, can this one little BB be the one that says, hey, yes, we're going to keep going down? It absolutely can. But I don't expect the same kind of reaction that we saw right here with that strong move down. Also, another weak retracement here when that pulls back so far right here, which told us to anticipate more pushing to the downside. Well, we don't see that happening here just yet. For me to feel really comfortable about this giving us a stronger move to the downside instead of just being kind of stuck between this area again, would be breaking of that bottom Bollinger Band, and not just like a little tiny over the side break, not something like this. I want to see a strong break. I want to see those BBs really separate, give us some direction between them, or I'm sorry, give us some distance between them. That's what gives me that, okay, I have a really confident idea that this should continue to the downside. But we're not going to see that until we see that break. And we want to see a decent break. Now, back in the day when we first started doing this, that break would only need one BB to require to really show that distance. These days, we do like to see what happens with the second BB, because we may see something like this where it really doesn't push that far down and it turns around. So this BB right here, this blue one, it makes you kind of feel like, oh, it's just given that little bit of pullback into the area, but hasn't quite pushed down. But we really want to see a break of that bottom Bollinger Band to feel that confidence that it's going to really push down here. Otherwise, this is just continuing in the move to the upside to make a higher pivot. So if, the daily chart's a little big, what's my 28,657 saying? Well, it's not giving me a full ton confidence either, because if we look at it, we've really just been stuck between this area for a while. Now, that does give us a ton of space to run to come back down to this area if it's going to. Is this going to be some sort of little M pivot that'll push us back down? To be honest, I don't quite see it just yet. The BBs are outside of the Bollinger Bands and pulling outside here. But they are still in this area of the overrun of the zero line. Anyways, so if we do have an M pivot to the downside, we have these higher pivots here. Our first thought process of where could it go is back down to this area that created the M pivot. We'd expect it to either equal or exceed if we want the M pivot to continue. This is just not like a super warm and fuzzy feeling about taking a long or taking a short. We are outside of the Bollinger Bands here. BBs are not that really sharp distance down we'd like to see. And they're a little bit bunched together here. Just looking at something here. Okay, it kind of seems like we might see something more that will look like this. And something that I'm looking at with the Bollinger Bands is the way that they've kind of spread and come back together and spread. So back here wasn't a real clear indication the way the Bollinger Bands are of a ton of strength to continue in that direction. And it's the same kind of thing that we saw back here. So we may see this pull, roll off of this area, pull back up, and then see if this area is going to hold or break. With the way that the EMAs look, guys, this is not a strong indication of direction in either way. Like we would have been able to, back here when we pulled into these areas, and I'm sure there was some trades that could happen back here as well. But when it pulls into those EMAs, then we can use them as areas to create a bounce to push this market back in the opposite direction or back in that direction if the EMAs are wide, spread apart, and strong. But once they get weaker, we may see more limited movements or easily breaking through them when if you just don't want to keep trusting the fact that these EMAs are going to hold if we have little weak movements like these kind of things. So it's tempting to take a short right here. You do see the pullback. You do see it starting to roll over here, but and honestly, this is probably going to be the one that books it if it's going to go. It's got to break this bottom Bollinger Band. And you can see on the 233 hasn't even broken that bottom band yet. There we go. Look at on the 233 there. It was some great little pullbacks. This is a BB that I talked to Dan a lot about that I just really love these days. That last little attempt and that pullback right into the area, and it can't even cross that top Bollinger Band. Sometimes it does cross that top Bollinger Band, but just enough to just kind of hook back in. And so I'm actually really loving it. If I had looked at the 233 during that time, I would maybe have seen more of an opportunity to move with that one, with that little bit of a hook and then push down. And you can see we got that little bit of a hook there, pushed up, and we were pulling back into the area, never crossed that top band, pushed down. Here's that little bit of a hook right here that I was just talking about, pulling right back up into that area, EMAs opening to the downside. Now, our EMAs on our 1597 are starting to widen, but they're widening right as we're starting to see a bit of a slowdown in the MACDs. So what I would expect is probably a little bit more of a deeper pull back into them. Maybe a nice, big, strong move to come right back up here and lead a little bit lower. But if these roll down just from here, I'll probably go straight to the downside. Let me go ahead and pull that up a little bit more. But I do like that we've got some movement, so we can move to these bigger charts to see a little bit more going on. Okay, BBs are still outside on the 1597. Look at them trying to pick up strength. This would be a look to the push to the downside if these BBs were rolling over, but they're not. Oh, are they going to do it now? Are we going to get a little head and shoulders here to do it? Let's see. I would not trust that. Yeah, look at the BB turning blue really quick. Still 800 ticks. It can change back to purple. It's just one of these things that happens on the 1597 or on any of the charts. When you have strength and it rolls over like this and you don't quite get the BBs changing with it, it doesn't mean that it won't push down. It means that it's in a space that's kind of uncomfortable for me to take as a push down because I want to see a reaction in these BBs before I really get into this trade, but we can see it's doing a sharp push, which gave movement to the downside. Are we going to see something kind of like this, get back down to the Bollinger Bands and pop up, or maybe not even quite make it to the Bollinger Bands? Still got strength down on the 233 MACDs. Baby's pulling back. Or pushing down, excuse me, not pulling back. Yeah, I'd have probably missed that one almost all day. Just really not seeing the rollover in the 1597 MACDs would have been very, very difficult for me. Sometimes I like to close it up like this so I can really see if they have distance or if I've just got it spread out so much that I'm telling myself that there's distance. And so pulling it back in like this a little bit, you can really see the angle and the distance in the BBs that are happening there on the 28,657 to tell us that we do have moves to the downside. What's that?
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I like to
See multiple.
look. Yeah, multiple indications. I mean, you can see how the second pivot on the 1597 was trying to reach the EMA, and we still had some distance to the zero line. At the same time, we had the head and shoulders on the 233,
Yeah.
and also that divergence on the second pivot on the 233.
Right here.
Al- yeah,
Yeah.
aligned with the cross to the downside below the EMAs, the strength. So that's what I like to see when I'm looking for a trade. Like, not only one chart giving me
Wow.
all the information, but if we have multiple charts, like the same kind of clues, that we enough reasons to take a trade. That's what
Yeah.
I like to to find on when I'm looking for something.
Yes. I agree. Like if we see more than one, and you don't want to just see a flag reversal bar in one chart and be like, okay, it's time to take this trade. You need to
Exactly.
see, not just a reversal bar on one chart, but maybe a reversal bar on another combined with a something like an in pivot or a flag reversal, or I'm sorry, excuse me, a head and shoulders, like some sort. You want multiple signals saying that it's going in this direction. Now,
Exactly. Yeah, I'm looking for to make sense in all of the charts, or at least in multiple of them, to make sense. Like, what am I looking? Am I looking at flag reversal on the 233, but the 1597 is still showing a little strength to the upside?
yeah,
So
yeah,
probably it's going to be fighting with each other.
yeah,
So I prefer to make sense in most of them, so it can make sense what I'm taking.
yes. I agree 100%. But, if you see this trade take off, you can take these pullbacks that happen on the 233 to be part of it. Now, once you get to this area, there's still opportunities to take the trade, but you got to be a little more careful at this point. We've already had such a big run and everything, and we're starting to see a slowdown here a little bit. We've got white BBs here. We've got MACDs leading higher. So if you choose to take these, you need to be really aware that it has the opportunity to give a deeper pullback. Because it may still continue down even with a deeper pullback. But I would just be very, and you can see it happening right now. Be very careful if you're going to take, if you're going to take these 233 pullbacks that have a lot of strength in the MACDs on the 1597, in the MACDs on the 10946. To me, these are almost no brainers to take whenever they pull back. And then if you're not paying attention and you're just continuing on pushing down with those and not seeing that, ooh, now we've got like a major divergence between these pivots. Oh man, we got a second divergence leading higher and couldn't even cross this bottom Bollinger Band. We're going to see a deeper pullback as we're seeing right now. So if you're seeing those and you're already in a trade, me personally, I'm pulling down my risk just a little bit lower each time to lock in a little more profit. So if it does pull all the way back, I'm not going to lose much. It's either that or you see that first signal of that divergence on the 233, which a lot of times the first signal of divergence on the 233 is way too early of an exit. You'd really kind of want to see it slow down in at least the 1597. So your first divergence tends to be a little bit early exit. Yeah, so now it's pulled back. It's rolling off this band. We need to see it get down back below this pivot again to really expect the MACDs to continue. Yeah, so we're getting to a major area that creates a bounce on the MACDs. It can come down a little bit lower, but I am expecting the MACDs to start before long, really doing these deeper pullbacks towards the zero line, which has one of two effects. Either we're going to see the price go with it and go deeper and deeper back into the EMAs, or we're going to see lots of divergences be created at that time. So if the MACDs keep pulling back and the price keeps pushing down, it's a lot of divergences. Divergences, multiple divergences in a row, is typically a sign of a strong move because we are breaking through that divergence. We're going to keep creating them because MACDs can only go so far, guys. The MACDs have to pull back towards that zero line. And if they've gotten to their extreme area and they need to pull back, we see a strong market that's pushing continuously with that. So currently, we're not seeing the same type of pullback we saw last time the MACDs pulled back. Look how much work it took to get them back above the Bollinger Bands. This one, not quite as much. Now, we're on our first BB above the Bollinger Band, so we do want to see it continue up if we're going to expect it to give us a much deeper pullback. But to me, I don't really see much divergence happening on the 1597. Now, I know this pivot is leading higher right here. It is a major difference between what happened with the pivot pulling down here and what happened here. But when I've seen such strong moves like these, typically I'm looking for another bigger divergence, not just retracement divergence, but another bigger divergence to say, hey, this move's ended and we're pushing back towards the upside. I don't see that kind of thing happening just yet. You know, Dan asked me once, he's like, are you using all your charts? And I'm like, technically no, but yes. You know, I'm looking, I do below have my 4181 610 daily, and because I have another screen right below, and my 28 657. And I will pay attention to the strength of the MACDs on the 28 657. Like right now, the MACDs have a lot of distance between them. I'm gonna pull it up really quick. They're white and they have a lot of distance between them, but we also are getting lower, you know, getting close to the end of this bar. So I want to see where that lands. And is this going to be going to pull back in and kind of roll back up as I'm trying to think and wait for these other things to happen? So I am looking at like my 610 that the EMAs are opening up to the downside and we're starting to see the potential for this pushing back down. But I'm not using them all at once. I'm just saying, okay, I see this. What else do I have in favor of this? What else is telling me that this has a really good opportunity of continuation in that direction?
Tim says, do you mostly use market buy to sell, or do you use the buy to sell limit entries when you take your trades usually? So I was always using limit orders until about
Not long ago, huh?
about a month or two ago, because when I look for divergence trades, then I tend to use the limit order because I'm waiting for a reversal bar, generally, just for that extra confirmation. But if it's going to be like a pullback trade, or if the market volatility is really high, then I've started using the buy and sell, mainly because I used to suffer, and occasionally still do, hesitation. And I just feel, you know, when you get up, when you're kind of messing around, trying to work out, like you think it's going to go down, and then you're going here, and then you're counting how many ticks behind the pivot it needs to go. And so I'm like, okay, I'm at 49, so I need to enter on 47. And then I'm waiting for the reversal bars, whereas I can just decide, do I want to be in or do I not want to be in? And then just hit one of these two. So generally 90% of the time now I'm using just the buy and sell.